We're pleased to have, at the family's invitation, Harold's friend and mayor, her worship mayor, Hazel McCallion, now share words of remembrance.
Well, this is a tall order. I've had many, but this is really special. I want to thank the family for giving me the honor and the privilege of saying a few words about Harold. Much has been said about him, the obituary in the newspaper and such. So all those gathered together today to say farewell and to pay tribute to an outstanding Canadian, an outstanding citizen of the Greater Toronto Area, and especially an outstanding citizen of the city of Mississauga. And I know all of you who are assembled here today know of the wonderful contribution that he's made in so many ways. It's so great to see the Knights of Malta here. I think they will remember when he had me installed in the Knights of Malta. So they're here to pay tribute to him. We are gathered today. I don't usually follow notes, but it's very difficult for me today to speak on behalf of Harold. We are gathered here today to say farewell, to pay tribute to an exceptional human being and one of Mississauga's most noteworthy and beloved citizens, Harold Shipp. Harold was many things to many people: husband, father, grandfather, and friend, a captain of industry, and you all know his record in home building and commercial building, community leader, and a philanthropist second to none. All of us here today have our own unique memories of how he touched our lives. His was a life that accomplished brilliance and a life that inspired emulation, which burned brightly so that others' paths were lit. And he was unique. I was blessed to call him my friend, and I can assure you I will miss him. There are people who come into our lives, and some of them are just flickers of light, soon forgotten, but some people are with us for a lifetime. And my friendship with Harold, which lasted over 40 years, was truly a blessing. And I also had the privilege of knowing his dad, Gordon Shipp. In fact, I was mayor of Streetsville when he built Riverview in Streetsville. Being 93 years of age, I've had to attend many funerals in my time, but it's especially hard to say goodbye to Harold, my friend, especially one treasured and dear to me like Harold was. I have one less person I can turn to and say, remember when we, or remember the time. I will also miss Harold's regular phone calls, just to say hello, whether he was in Mississauga, Florida, on a ship somewhere, or not. I always had a call from Harold. Harold took his friendship seriously, and he invested a great deal of time and effort in caring for those in his life. Harold had a huge capacity for joy. In fact, he was quite humorous at times. Sometimes his jokes were funny, and sometimes they were unusual. His stories were entertaining, and when he spoke to you, he made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was such a thoughtful individual, and his character and integrity were surpassed only by his kindness and generosity. In fact, I remember all the many colorful jackets he wore. I used to think, what is he going to wear tonight at this event? I'm reminded of the adage, the true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. And Harold was the embodiment of that sentiment. His philanthropy was legendary. And by the way, when he donated money to the Trillium Hospital, he challenged others to match it. That was his idea. He got to match it, and he worked hard to make sure that happened. His was legendary in his hard work and efforts for organizations like the Trillium Hospital. I call it the Mississauga Hospital, because his dad made a major contribution to building that hospital. And Harold carried on, and even Catherine, his daughter, carried on as chairman of the board, the foundation board of the Trillium Hospital. The Kiwanis Club and the Red Cross. He was involved in every organization I can think of. And all of them was to improve the lives of others and contribute or make happen services and facilities that will serve people for generations. Harold is also credited, along with his father Gordon, with starting the Mississauga Citizen of the Year. And Harold, of course, himself was a Citizen of the Year. And he also arranged to have a beautiful statue of his father Gordon installed at City Hall. He was president director of the Canadian Home Builders and the Toronto Home Builders. I just want to name a few, because it truly demonstrates he was a builder of facilities, but also a builder of the community. He was a life director of the U.S. National Association of Home Builders and a trustee and life council member of the U.S. Urban Land Institute. He was a member of the Economic Land Unit here in the city of Toronto. He acted as chairman of the royal visit to Mississauga for the opening of our Civic Center. And no detail was left undone. And let me give you an example. He toured the City Hall with the group that comes when royalty visits your facility. And of course, he inspected my office and facilities. And he came to me and said, "We got to make a change in your office." I said, "What do you mean?" "The toilet in your bathroom is industrial. It's got to be converted to a residential toilet." So I now have a toilet residential. That only gives you an example of the detailing. He was the City of Mississauga's first recipient of the Civic Award of Philanthropy in 2012. Now, I must go back to the royal visit, because we had a luncheon for the Duke and Duchess of York in the Great Hall at our Civic Center. And during the lunch, he showed the Duchess of York, how to take a serviette out of an empty wine bottle. She will never forget that. See, uniqueness was his role in life. Above all, Harold was a gentleman. I can't remember ever being at any event that I was asked to speak, and he was there, and he escorted me to the platform. Harold was gracious and had dignity above fame or celebrity. Anyone could recognize Harold at any event, as I mentioned before, because of the dapper man in the room. True civility is not to be found in material things, but in the heart and soul of a man, despite his wealth and prosperity. Harold was not enslaved by material things, but instead used his good fortune to improve the condition of others. He lived the adage, "To whom much is given, much is expected." I also think of the times when he did present the Citizen of the Year award, and it's in honor of his dad. Always a tear dropped when he remembered his dad. He leaves behind a legacy of social consciousness and responsibility that we should all aspire, and we all have a responsibility to do our part to build on what he has left behind. What a great man. The city of Mississauga. I think of the houses that he built and he put the name Shipp on every one of them, so that no matter who owned the house, whether it was the first buyer and many buyers later, that it was a Shipp-built house. Secondly, those houses still stand in Applewood Acres and Streetsville, still as strong as Shipp was. Secondly, when I was elected mayor in 1978, cows and horses were grazing where he built those 4 beautiful executive office buildings. So Shipp, the Shipp family, is definitely a part of this great city. Well-named Shipp. My thoughts and prayers are with Harold's wife, Margaret, his daughters, Victoria and Catherine, his son, Gordon, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It was so nice to see them all up and light a candle. And may the light that shone when he was alive will continue to shine as these candles demonstrate. I will leave you with a poem I came across, which I thought was fitting and hopefully provide some comfort. God saw that he was getting tired. Oh, I got to tell you about the last time. There's so many things I want to talk about, Harold. We were at the running of the Queen's Plate, Margaret and I, with another friend. Now, when you go to the running of the Queen's Plate, no matter whether it's pouring rain, you've got to go out and see the horses. Well, Margaret and I wasn't too sure. We wanted to go out. There he strutted out in his top hat and such, got soaking wet to go out and see the horses. That was the year before last. This year, at the running of the Queen's Plate, he took us across the entire racetrack to see the winning horse. And there he was ahead, and Margaret and I were trudging behind to keep up with him. Well, unfortunately, a week later, he was rushed to hospital. But he recovered from that, and he came home. So I went to see him at his home, and we had a great chat. And he wanted to know all about my autobiography that's coming out in October. And Margaret and I think, had him convinced that it's time that he had an autobiography done. Next week, my executive assistant got a call. He wanted to see the person who had written my book. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. I think that's sad. I think he should have had an autobiography. What a story. What a success story. What an inspiring story of a man that did so much. And his son-in-law said to me yesterday, he didn't live 88 years, he lived 2,000 years, because he made every minute count of his life in a very unique way. As I say, I could go on and on with the wonderful stories of a man that has left a legacy. He's left a mark on whatever he touched. And so I'm going to end with this poem, or else I'm not going to get through much more. God only takes the best. God saw that he was getting tired. A cure was not to be. So he put his arms around him and whispered, "Come with me." With tearful eyes, we watched him suffer and saw him fade away. We could not make him stay. A golden heart stopped beating. Hard-working hands laid to rest. God broke our hearts to prove to us he only takes the best.